Lots of notes today. Turns out there's lots of things out there about unconditional love and talking about it and what is it. Thank you, thanks for asking about the events. They've been really great. And Hurricane, when you get to the U.S., we're looking forward to having you join us. Anyway, hello. So I looked up some stuff about unconditional love. What is it, and then also what is it not? What is conditional love? What is unconditional love? And what is unconditional love not? Right. So unconditional love is known as affection without any limitations or love without conditions. Sometimes it's referred to as true altruism or complete love. Each area of expertise, meaning like psychology and religion and philosophy, all have different ways of describing unconditional love, but most agree that it's a type of love that has no bounds and is unchanging, which I think is an important part of the stuff that I was reading about. Like, no matter what happens in the course of things, when you love someone unconditionally, the love itself is unchanging. That doesn't have to do with like behaviors and what happens, but the love itself. And then there was a quote here about in Christianity, unconditional love has 4 parts: affection, friendship, what they call eros, which is, I guess, the church's way of saying sex, and charity. Then they talk about in psychology how unconditional love refers to a state of mind where one has the goal of increasing the welfare of another despite any lack of benefit for oneself. So I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it or looking at it, right? Like, can you love someone, or do you love someone without the thought of an exchange, without the thought of what you're getting back in exchange for the love? And again, this has nothing to do with behaviors. It has nothing to do with boundaries and all the other healthy stuff we'll get into in all these notes that I found about it. But did you have anything you wanted to kick in at this point? Conditional love is based on conditions or expectations of my needs being. If I love conditionally, it means I have some expectations that the object of my love is going to meet my needs or keep me satisfied in some way. And that also says that conditional love is a way to diminish the autonomy and relatedness necessary to create intrinsic condition or motivation, right? Unconditional love, on the other hand, is the ability to encourage the autonomy of the other person and the type of relatedness that leads to personal growth. And I really believe that's one of the ways that we can measure unconditional growth or see evidence of it, is if I love you and I love you in such a way that your growth, your personal development matters to me, and it matters to me without any regard to my own. Like, you being in my life, me loving you, is not in any way transactionally related to me and what I need and my own growth, right? I just love you and I care about you, and what's important and good for you is what matters to me in that relationship. Sorry, I'm having a dry mouth today. Thank you. I'm glad you think this is a good topic. I hope you guys will join us in the conversation. So anyway, so then there were some other famous people, right? Carl Rogers is a humanistic psychologist who spoke of unconditional positive regard, and that concept has meant a lot to me. I have a therapist right now who engages me that way, and it means that an individual needs an environment that provides them with genuineness, authenticity, openness, self-disclosure, acceptance, empathy, and approval. The unconditional positive regard exists not only in social and familial settings, but also in therapy, right? The idea being that I have positive regard for you as a person, no matter what. No matter whether you're struggling, no matter whether you're any particular kind of emotional way, no matter even if you're making mistakes, even if you're doing things wrong. It doesn't mean that I won't help you or support you or point things out or suggest things to you, but I do it from the standpoint of a positive regard for who you are as a human being. And that's been really important. Hi, Liv. So that concept is meant a lot to me. It's meant a lot to me in the therapy that I'm in now. And it's something that I've tried to have in my own life. And I'm like human and lots of faults, but I try to hold a positive regard for the people that I love and care about as unconditionally as I can. And usually the place where I run into trouble around that is in my own trauma, right? My trauma and my trauma responses are the things that make me step away from being able to hold that for anyone I care about. Hi, Linda. Thank you. You're so sweet. Yeah, Jackal, you're going to go see the Metallica 72 World Tour. That's amazing. Have a good time. And then there's a quote in here, a reference to Viktor Frankl. For those of you who don't know Viktor Frankl, he is the founder of humanistic psychology. He was someone who survived Nazi Germany, the concentration camps, and came out the other side, not jaded and bitter about life, but with the idea that, where is he? Oh no, that love is the only way to grasp another human being at the innermost core of their personality. No one can become fully aware of the essence of another human being unless he loves him. Furthermore, by his love, the loving person enables the beloved to actualize, right? Like, so this, like, in everything I do and everywhere I look, love is the highest spiritual order, right? Love is what heals. Love is what lets us connect to one another. And it's not always easy. Love is not always easy. But I think it's supremely important. It's in some ways the most important thing. I really resonate with that Viktor Frankl quote and his position, right? And this is a person who came out of, concentration camps, embracing the idea that love is the highest order, right? And that's incredible. Abraham Maslow, who talked about our hierarchy of needs, also talks about, sorry, the print is just a little too small for me. An individual has to have a positive perspective for themselves, right? So unconditional positive regard or unconditional love is something that we can hold for ourselves. Like I can endeavor to love myself for all of my parts, good and bad. I'm sorry, I'm having an emotional day today. But I've warned you from the beginning of these that, tears happen. So these are some of the definitions and descriptions that I found to help me put words to what unconditional love is. How do we know what it is? Its value. Yes, okay. You have my consent to send me virtual hugs. So then, in another place, I found something that gave us five watches for what is unconditional love, right? Giving into the vulnerability of loving someone wholeheartedly, right? Unconditional love can exist. This is not just romantic love, right? Unconditional love happens between family members. It can happen between parents and children. I think there's probably a lot of parents that can relate to the idea of loving their child unconditionally, especially parents who have children who have maybe not become the best people in their life or have not had the easiest times or maybe have even done things that are, harmful. I mean, every serial killer has a mom, right? And so there's that sense of, can I love you even if you're like what we consider to be a bad person or you do really bad things? Does that mean by definition that you are unworthy of love? And that's one of those big, heavy existential questions that people struggle with, right? It doesn't mean that anybody's behavior is excusable, and it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be consequences for bad behavior, but does that mean by category that you're unworthy of love at all, like from anyone? So at any time you guys want to jump into this call, love is the highest level I can get through my day. Positive attitude and smile. Thank you, Jackal. Sometimes it's not always as easy for me as that, but if I can stay if I can say mindfulness to the love I have for myself and the love that I have for the power in the universe and the love that I have for the people around me, including you, I have a better shot at working through the hard stuff. Grace, I'm reading from quotes that I got from Wikipedia, from a place that I found called Dive Through. There's a couple of different apps or websites that I found when I just searched for unconditional love that spoke to me. And so I copied them and made notes out of them so that I would have them to talk about, or, you know, have them as a springboard for conversation for today around this topic. So one of the things here is having no strings attached, right? Loving someone unconditionally means that you don't have an ulterior motive or an unspoken expectation or a sense of an obligation from the other person. You just love them. It's a selfless act of caring for another person without thinking about his actions would benefit you in the future. Partners support each other, or anyone you love for that matter. It can bring happiness and health to a relationship. Helping partners through tough times, emotional struggles, life challenges can help you accomplish more together than you ever could on your own. And that's absolutely been my experience. Can I share? We struggle, right? And that shouldn't be a shock to anyone, because hard long-term relationships struggle. I don't know anyone who's been in a long-term relationship that just says, ugh. When someone gets to a 20 or 30 year anniversary, I don't know anyone that says, oh, that was so easy. Like, I don't think that's true. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of good things, but it's work. And one of the things that I've learned in this relationship, and I've had several major life relationships, but in our challenges, I have been provided the opportunity to see myself and to be able to work on myself and to do things that enable me to fit myself to be a better partner than I've ever been able to be before. And sometimes it's directly not despite of, but because of the challenges, because of where our traumas run into each other, because we bring up things in one another that would not otherwise be brought up, right? One of the things I learned a couple of relationships ago is that the issues that I have in relationships don't come up when I'm by myself, right? So the things that I have to work with that are relationship issues are not issues for me if I'm by myself. So it's great because I'm not bothered by them, but it's not great because I don't have an opportunity to work to overcome them or to grow from them, right? So I have to be in a relationship to be able to have those things be brought up, and that's tough. It's tough no matter how you look at it, right? To have challenges happen inside the relationship as a direct result of individual challenges. Like, I don't know any other way, right? And sometimes I get to a moment where I hit a wall and I think, oh my God, I can't do this for another minute. It's so hard. And then when I calm down, I have the awareness that the problem I'm having with it is mine. The problem that I'm having with it is my issue, and that it's something I need to work through. Like, he doesn't need to change for me to be okay. Like, whatever he's working on that's his is his, and it's not mine. And the fact that I'm triggered by it, the fact that it makes me feel bad, is not his fault, right? And the only way that I'm going to get through it is if I keep the focus on me, if I keep the focus on what's happening inside of me and what I need to do to grow and change and learn. And then, because if I don't, the truth is if I were to run, because part of my trauma response is fight or flight, right? So sometimes the trauma response is, oh my God, I got to run away. If I ran away, I'd bring me with me. Like, ultimately, the feeling of running doesn't have anything to do with him anyway. It has everything to do with me and my trauma and what I continue to still need to do. And I'll tell you, I've done a lot of work. And the fact that I still have more work to do, I could get resentful about that if I wanted to. But it's just the truth of it. It's just the truth of my life. And what I have to do is look at the work that I've done up until now. But some of what enables me to do this is the fact that I know that he loves me at least I feel as unconditionally loved by him as I have ever felt from anyone. And I feel like no matter how I feel and how challenged this is, he's not going to leave me, that he's going to stay, and then he's going to continue to give me the opportunity to work through my stuff so that I can show up more fully myself and more fully able to love him as I grow out of my trauma response and my hurts and the things that make me less than the partner I want to be. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that because I believe it to my core that you won't go and that you'll be here as hard as it gets. And I don't know that there's anything like that. There's any more unconditional love than that, right? You know, as long as I'm not a bad person, as long as I don't do anything unethical or immoral, I believe that to be true in my heart. And so it makes it okay. It makes it okay for me to sit still when I feel like running. It makes me okay to continue to look at my feelings even when I want to check out. And that's unconditional love to me. So thank you for that. Thank you for being that for me in my life and for giving me that when I haven't had it anywhere else ever in my life. Because it's one thing to say you love someone. In my last relationship, my husband, rest his soul, he loved me, but he loved me kind of around my crazy edges. He loved me because he wasn't bothered by any of my stuff. And so in a way, it was a beautiful respite from my earlier relationship in my life, and I valued it. But I was never going to become the person that I more fully need to become in a relationship with someone who didn't challenge me, in a relationship with someone who didn't look at me and say, you know, by virtue of their own trauma or by virtue of their awareness and their observation, that I needed to change, that I needed to grow, and that I need to continue to come up against this hard stuff so that I can become the person that I was meant to be, the person that when I was born with my blueprint from the universe, the way I understand it, that I'm able to become that person. And that's still a work in progress. I have not arrived. I have not achieved that state of nirvana, that I'm the full actualization of the person I'm meant to be. But I'm closer than I ever was, and in a large part it's because of this relationship that I've been in with you for the last 6 years. So there's my vulnerable and heartfelt explanation of what unconditional love is to me and has been for me. Anyway, I can go back to my notes and we can go back to reading. Thank you for the kind support. After being married 18 years, and we help each other with our feelings, and you're completely right. I'm just speaking from my heart. I'm glad that it resonates. I'm glad that you feel like you can relate to it too. So partners honor requests without compromising themselves. Loving someone unconditionally doesn't mean that you can't have boundaries. We'll get in this article that I wrote it from. They said they're going to talk about it later, but you love the person or people you love can ask for your help, but you're not obligated to help or to agree to their request if it goes against your needs, boundaries, or morals. And they shouldn't expect you to compromise yourself to help them. Unconditional love can still be considered unconditional love when boundaries are included, right? And I think that was when we brought up this topic on Tuesday, I think this was some of the arguments that people wanted to make, that like if you have a boundary or if you have something, or even if there's like a request for some sort of immoral thing, or it goes like that means it's not unconditional. And I argue with that's not true. I believe that you can have boundaries. I believe that you can say no to requests from the partner. You can step back. You can say like, I don't have, what did we say? Spoons. I don't have the spoons for that right now, but that doesn't make you wrong for asking. And that doesn't mean I love you less or that I don't love you unconditionally because I can't show up in the way that you're asking me to show up for you right now. That's just having a boundary. That doesn't mean my love for you is any less, nor is your love for me any less. Tough times are worked through with kindness. It's only natural for relationships to hit rough patches. No one's perfect and has the perfect relationships. But we have disagreements. Forgiveness, kindness, listening skills, and calm communication are major players when it comes to working through rough spots. The key is that everyone in the relationship has to enact these techniques because otherwise it's unfair and unkind to the other partner. I think that's just true. Partners provide security for each other. With unconditional love, there's no fear or sense of uncertainty. It's secure, kind, and loving. You don't feel like you have to walk around on eggshells to placate the other person. It's safe and warm and an emotional space without judgment that you share with this person. And that's something I struggle with. I don't feel insecure, but I do struggle with the eggshell part, and I'm learning. That's another thing that I'm learning about in myself, how not to do, what I need to do to be on solid enough ground and spirit. Like I talked to my sponsor this morning, on spiritual terra firma, enough that I don't have to walk on eggshells for anybody, right? I can be solid in myself and know that I'm okay, and that whatever's going on for the other person, I don't have to tiptoe around. I don't have to pretend, in order to make things work. But I can only not tiptoe around if I am solid in who I am, if I'm solid in myself. And that's my job. Like, because when I'm in it, I want to make the other person change. I want to make you be different so that I don't have to. And that's not how it works, right? That's not how it works, right? So anyway, this is very similar to what the animals I foster who have come from traumatic backgrounds. Yeah, no, I think animals really reflect back to us what unconditional love is and looks like. Puppies in particular, all they want is to be loved, and they will, and they'll do whatever they need to, and no matter how they're treated by humans, they'll continue to love their human unconditionally, which sometimes is sad because humans in the world sometimes are not kind to animals, and the animals love them anyway, and that's heartbreakingly beautiful that's how that is in the world, right? I endeavor to be worthy of the unconditional love that you get from a dog. I want to feel like I don't ever do anything to not be worthy of another person's unconditional regard. Sorry, it's one of those days. So then there was unconditional love examples. So unconditional love looks like, I've accepted your faults without a desire to change you. Your needs are paramount, and I see them as valid. We don't try to make each other feel small, and the relationship is reciprocal and not transactional. Those are signs of unconditional love. So what are the pros and cons of unconditional love, right? It can be good for you. It suggests that unconditional love has an impact on your emotional well-being. Children who receive high levels of nurture and love from their parents at a young age have less distress in adulthood, as well as fewer mental health syndromes. I mean, I suppose most people are aware of this because this study was done a long time ago. But they've done studies where when infants or like baby monkeys or whatever are raised and they're not held, like physically held, they die. They just literally physically die from a lack of affection. It matters that we love each other. It matters that we care and that we show that to one another, right? They go from fearful, angry, wary and wanting, right, to ravenous for love. Yes, Grace, that's all of the symptoms. But then at the end, if when they're babies, nobody holds them, they die. And I think a lot of people who struggle with very hard to resolve traumas do that because some of these abandonments happened at such an early age that they don't remember them, and so they don't know why they struggle the way that they do. I know I still have unresolved trauma. The conversation I had this morning with my mentor/sponsor made it really clear that I now need to go back and do some more excavating because clearly there's some other thing I haven't uncovered that I need to uncover. And I'm hopeful. He also recommended EMDR, so I'm asking my therapist about an EMDR therapist, right? And hopefully, like, it won't turn out that it's so far back that I can't remember it or I can't find it, right? But my heart really bleeds for people for whom that's true, because that's a really long road of recovery. So Samantha, yes, as a child of abuse, I had to break the cycle for my own children or therapy for years. I can't tell you I have a good friend who had a horrible childhood. Terrible. I don't know personally anyone who's had a more traumatic childhood than she has. And she has, through the sheer will of her determination, broken that cycle and has raised two incredible, beautiful, well-grounded children who know they're loved that's like the highest order of thing we can do in this world, is to break those cycles and to not pass them on to our children. Because this stuff does, the lack of unconditional love, the lack of positive regard is handed down from generation to generation. You say that all the time. People only do what they can do because it's what they were handed. It's what they were given, right? Your parents didn't know any better. So that's what happened for you. That's kind of how that works. Oh, I need to drink water, check. Okay. Unconditional love can also provide a sense of security. You're free to be yourself and express your needs without fear of judgment. I think fear of judgment, or being free of the fear of judgment, is an important part of unconditional love and relationships that are founded on it, right? Like when I can speak whatever I need to speak, when I can speak when I'm not even clear what it is I need to say, when I can make mistakes, not make mistakes, but maybe sometimes for me, when I don't know what's happening for me, processing looks like having the space held for me to say the 3 wrong things before I can say the right thing, and to not be judged for the 3 wrong things I said until I could get to the thing that was really true. And so that kind of freedom from judgment is a way of feeling loved, a way of understanding that you are loved.
So let's define judgment.
Okay.
The ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions.
Say that again.
The ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. The second is a misfortune or calamity viewed as a divine punishment.
Oh, like the spiritual judgment, like the God judgment.
Well, it's because the fear of being judged, everyone judges. There's always judgment off of the first definition, to the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. Are the inclusion of the misfortune or calamity viewed as divine punishment, and using both versions of the definitions in one definition, is what makes judgment fearful, being fearful of judgment.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
And they're not combined, they're independent of each other.
People have made this argument that judgment is not inherently wrong or bad.
It's just because coming to sensible conclusions.
And because most of us can't disentangle the second definition from it, it always feels like it's bad or something that you don't want to have to experience. But I see what you're meaning. It's almost like, I think we've tried to use the word discernment to take the place of that first definition of judgment, right? Yeah, and I think too, the difference between like judgment in the good way is the part about what you said, sensible, either decisions or outcomes, what you said, right? Like if I'm listening to you and you are not being rational right now, or you're in your feelings, you're talking about a bunch of stuff that like you're sorting through, some of what I can reflect back to you is what of the things that you have said, what looks like reasonable. Like if I'm speaking to someone who's really beating themselves up and they're caught up in an emotional cycle where they're not really being rational because they're caught up in how bad they feel, like the judgment I guess I can reflect back is, that doesn't really seem real. Like, let's look at some of this other evidence that are you really this bad person that you think you are right now? Or is it more reasonable to think that you made a decision that wasn't good for you, or you did something that maybe you could have done something else, and it's not reasonable to think that it's because you're a terrible person, right? And so I guess that's a type of judgment, right? Where does that sound like the example that goes to that definition? Yeah. Feelings happen. There's no morality to feelings. It's what you do with those feelings that matter. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's behavior. When I was talking to my mentor person earlier, like he was the first one to say, like, no matter how you're feeling right now, there's no right or wrong. There's no bad or good. There just is what's happening, and being able to sort it out. Being able to sort out what's happening. Like the determining or deciding up front if something's bad or good or right or wrong, to me, is the negative way of judging. It's a way of judging it without being able to like just see it for what it is, without that good or bad judgment that we want to put to things. Unconditional love promotes trust, and trust and security go hand in hand. So this is this thing about feeling secure in a relationship where there's unconditional love. And it says, healthy unconditional love can exist. It may be seen in the form of support while still having boundaries. I love you and I support you no matter what. However, I can't continue to help you if you don't get help for your addiction. And I think maybe that comes, I mean, in that realm, that comes up under the category of what they call tough love, right? Like parents who have to kick kids out of their house because they're so caught up in addiction cycles or negative behavior cycles that they're being harmed, right? Kids, there's plenty of situations where behind these things, kids steal from their parents and, kids do damage, kids do a lot of harm, and these can be adult kids, right? And so at a certain point, a parent can still love that child and love them. I would even offer love them unconditionally in terms of how you feel about them, but put hard boundaries in place that say, you can't live with me while you act like this. You can't live with me until you take care of yourself around this stuff. I think that's a thing too. It can also be unhealthy if it exists without boundaries, right? Sometimes feelings of love blind us to what's really going on, right? So there is that part too, and I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of that in a couple of places. In my third marriage, I loved the person, and I was also committed to an idea that it was my third marriage, and I was also so committed to an idea that I didn't want to have to get divorced again, that I overlooked, I didn't have boundaries, and I overlooked behaviors that I should have paid attention to. I overlooked behaviors that weren't acceptable, and I didn't set boundaries, and ultimately I did leave that relationship because, I mean, I'm not taking the full responsibility for their bad behavior, but I can take responsibility for how I treated myself around it and decisions that I made around it. Including not really fully showing up because I was caught up in some thoughts and feelings inside myself that I wasn't even acknowledging out loud. So I resonate with that too. Like, feelings of love can sometimes cause us to be blind to what's really going on. Let's see what it says. If you're showing unconditional love, but there's no mutual care and respect in the relationship, this is the unhealthy unconditional love, right? So if you love someone and they're not treating you, I mean, unconditional love doesn't just mean that you say I love you. Like, saying I love you is not unconditional love. Like, unconditional love is made manifest in behavior, right? In how we treat the other person, and how we speak to them, what we say. Like that, there's the evidence of any kind of love. Like, there's terrible relationships out there where one person tells the other they love them and they don't treat them at all like they love them. They give them no, and we can go down the whole rabbit hole of, personality disorders and things where people sort of abuse the whole concept of loving people, in order to blah, blah, blah. So that exists too. And none of that is unconditional love. Loving silence is healing in its own right. Yeah. Just to be able to exist, just to sit with them and exist. Yes, that's huge. And that goes back to the thing we were talking about over the last few days about holding space, and holding space being one of the highest forms of a sense love, really. Like, the most love I can show you is to just hold that space for you. And sometimes holding space means sitting in silence while you listen, and sometimes holding space means sitting in silence while you just feel your feelings and we don't have to talk at all. But I'm here with you, and my attention and my support says that I don't judge your feelings. I see your pain, and I also see that I can't fix it, but you can know that I'm here while you go through what you need to go through. That's a form of love. At least for sure, that's a form of love as far as I'm concerned. I have a saying that if you can't understand me in my silence, you won't understand my words. I get it. I don't know that I always understand someone in their silence. Like, I think sometimes I need words to understand what's happening, but I don't have to you don't have to speak in order for me to be comfortable to sit with you and to give you the space to feel whatever your feelings are and to be in your silence and to regard your silence as important and as something worthy of my time and attention, right? If you're sitting in feelings and you don't have words for them yet and someone just doesn't have patience for you and they walk away, that's essentially saying that they don't value what your process is enough to want to spend any time to hold for you to give you the space to do that. That's how I feel about that. When you have comprehensive, explicit communication, you can have secure, loving silence. Thank you, Grace. It's really nice to see you this morning, Grace. Thank you for this afternoon. Thank you for being here. Loving unconditionally requires reciprocity. While it may feel great to offer love to someone without expectations, it can also lead to feelings of depletion. It's important not to neglect your own needs. While love may require some sacrifice, you shouldn't give up everything for others. And now we want to open the codependency rabbit hole, right? Like I love and care for others at the expense of myself, and that's not on. If I have untreated codependency and I allow myself to be attracted to people who are comfortable taking without giving in return, I think that the person who's comfortable taking and not giving anything in return, absolutely, I have words for that. But if I continue to show up for that, it means I'm not taking care of myself. And if after a certain amount of energy and effort, the other person isn't willing to reciprocate, the other person isn't willing to help fill your cup, and they're only wanting you to fill their cup, then you got a choice to make, right? When I was in that situation in my first marriage, I was in a very messed up place in my life. I was in the middle of throes of like active addiction and codependency, and I had no idea what any of it was. And I had some help from a therapist who was like another life type coach. And at a certain point, I called them up to complain yet again. And they said to me, "What are you complaining about?" And I looked stunned. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "This is the situation you're in. This is the person you're with. Either be with this person and stop complaining about it, or leave, because we don't change people. You can't change another person. So if you're being treated this badly," and I was at the time, I mean, this person was taking and taking and taking and giving nothing back. And I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see the truth about it. And so what I did instead was, I think that's where I started that pattern of talking instead of really processing. So I would talk over things. But having that, there's been a few times in my life, and this will go back to yesterday. There have been times in my life where people have shown up and told me hard truths. Those were moments of kindness that changed my life. Showing up and telling somebody a hard truth is the kindest thing you can do for them if you're coming from a sincere place with only their best interest in heart. But nobody wants to show up and do it because it's hard to do. To be the person who shows up and says a hard thing in the spirit of really caring and loving for another person is an act of kindness. And those acts of kindnesses have been shown to me at times in my life that have literally changed my life. Like, I wouldn't be here today without the people who have done that for me. And so I'm grateful to all the people. Some of them aren't here anymore. But those have been moments. And when I'm in my cups, like, I'm not an easy person to tell the truth to. I'm not an easy person.
When you're in your what?
In my cups. It's a phrase that means like when I'm in the worst part of me, when I'm in negativity, self-absorption, I'm not in a good space. I'm not an easy person to show up and say, "Hey, I think you ought to look at this hard thing." I get angry. I get denial. I deny that you're right. I have a hard time accepting what someone says when they're telling me a truth that I don't want to see. And I don't know, maybe you guys are better at it, right? Maybe there's people that are better at hearing hard truths when they don't want to hear them. But I've always struggled with that. And yet, down the road, when that hard thing ended up being the thing that saved my life, I can be super grateful that that person had the courage to show up and tell the truth. Sassafras says that she thinks they think that we were separated at birth. Thanks, I feel seen and heard. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the comments that you all are helping me to feel seen and heard here today. So I really appreciate you bearing with me through this conversation. through all my tears and all the challenge of it. The timeliness of this conversation was really uncanny. So where was I?
Oh, you were at the back end of that.
The back end of this one. Reciprocity, right? You should also ensure that the person deserves your love. If someone treats you unkindly or is abusive, continuing to give unconditional love to that person can be damaging, and that's just another sentence to what I had just said. You can have expectations for other people. It's reasonable to expect to be treated with kindness. It's reasonable to expect to be supported in some way. Not that we can all support each other all the time, but those are some reasonable expectations of people in our lives. I really do believe that. I feel like I've done nothing but talk for like 45 minutes.
You have?
I'm happy for you to step in anytime you want.
No, you. Yesterday we printed out a lot of stuff, and I wanted to make sure we got through it. And then today there's a lot of stuff, and it's all important information. I learned a lot just from listening to it and redefining what unconditional love means. And Carl Rogers, with his unconditional positive regard, is a great foundation for it. Genuineness, authenticity, openness, self-disclosure, acceptance, empathy, and approval. But then you add with boundaries. And it needs to be secure and safe with no strings attached. That type of love without damning judgment. Like, there's going to be judgment, but then there's the damning judgment. And it's a space that supports the other person to actualize. It supports the person in actualizing, which brought me back to the conversation we had around the alcoholic friend that doesn't want you to quit because it benefits them.
Yeah.
And it's like they'll love you for what you can provide them, but the minute you take away what they're actualizing by their choices is when the love stops.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole thing about when you level up, some people don't level up with you because they're more interested in staying where they are. And I've had that happen. I say to people that I turned 18 and fell into a very deep hole. I literally just went right in the deep hole. And it took a lot of work. It took people throwing me ropes, shining flashlights down to help me find my way out. But there were people who were down there with me who were happy to be down there who, like, when I started climbing out, they were mad at me for leaving. I'm like, I'm getting out of this hole. Whatever I got to do, I'm getting out. And if you don't want to get out, like, I got to leave you here because your desire for me to stay here with you can't be greater than my desire to get better and my desire to get out. And that's some of what that was about at that point in my life, right? And so I did, and I've been doing it ever since.
Master Hurricane dropped a good question. We talk about unconditional love towards others. What about towards yourself?
Right. And there was a line that I kind of blew through in all of here that was about that.
Do you want to find it?
Let's see.
Because that's a pretty important question.
Yes, absolutely. That was in the Maslow's unconditional love perspective, by saying that in order to grow, an individual has to have positive perspective of themselves. Right, so you have to love yourself, and that's some of what I struggle with.
It says positive perspective.
Positive perspective, but that's in this context of this conversation of love.
But
and at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, love is a fairly high order of.
But the
need.
person has to have a positive perspective of it. It doesn't say they have to love themselves. It says they have to have a positive perspective of themselves, because self-love is harder than loving others.
Yeah.
So it's like they're not saying you have to love yourself in order to love others, but to have a positive perspective of yourself, to have the ability to love others. Either, I don't know if it's from a better place or from a place period.
Yeah.
Because, like, if a person doesn't love themselves but they love others more, it's like, what does that mean? And then what does that look like?
That's a good question.
Right? So it's like, because then you get into the realms of using other relationships as modes as things you depend on, and putting your worth in being valuable to someone else as opposed to being valuable to yourself.
Yes.
So where does self-love start, and then how does it get into the realm of unconditional self-love? And I was trying to reverse Carl Rogers's positive regard. What about positive self-regard?
Right.
Actually, let's define that. Self-regard, positive self. Because if we can put words to it, then people have a place to start.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Hurricane, I know. This is a big topic. There is a lot to talk about. I get that you have a lot to say about it. We have a lot to talk about it.
So positive self-regard refers to an individual's affirmative feelings towards themselves based on surrounding factors.
I wonder what the surrounding factors are.
Fucking websites. It's like, just take me to the thing that it was talking about. I don't want to have to dissect it.
Yeah. Well, it's all the advertising on the internet too.
Let's see, an example of positive self-regard. In relationship, the easiest, that's not self-regard. Okay, get to know yourself. Here we go, this is a good one. And it ends up going into self-esteem. Get to know yourself. Try to challenge unkind thoughts about yourself. This is it right here. Say positive things to yourself. Practice saying no. Speak up for yourself, essentially. Try to avoid comparing yourself to others. And do something nice for yourself. So get to know yourself, for example, what makes you happy and what you value in life. You might find it helpful to write this in a journal. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And it's not such an easy answer. What I would challenge you to do is, what makes you happy, and then why does it make you happy? And what do you value in life? And why do you value it in life? And if you can start fleshing out those answers, you'll have a lot more firm ground underneath you to really mean what you're telling yourself. Try to challenge unkind thoughts about yourself. I remember a few years ago, I started self-talking negatively. And it lasted about 2 or 3 years. And I caught it when it started, and I said, don't get into it, calling myself dumb when I did dumb shit. And I was aware of it. And that awareness is what allowed me to stop it. But it took me a moment to get there. You might automatically put yourself down. If you find yourself doing this, it can help to ask, would I talk to a friend this way?
I said that to someone last night.
Say positive things to yourself. Some people like to do it in front of a mirror. It can feel strange at first, but you may feel more comfortable the more you do it.
I know that term is affirmations. When I first heard about affirmations, I couldn't have been more negatively judgmental about them. I was like such a poo-poo, dismissive, like that's some kind of hocus pocus bullshit. Like, but it's not. And it's a really excellent tool to counter negative thoughts and feelings.
Practice saying no. Being assertive can be difficult if you're not used to it, but agreeing to too many things to please others can be draining. Is draining. It could help to pause, take a breath, and think about how you feel about agreeing to do something you don't want to do. And that can start as simple as turning down lunch when you don't really want to go.
Yeah.
Try to avoid comparing yourself to others. For example, it might help to limit how much time you spend on social media and online communities. What other people often choose to share about their lives isn't always the full picture. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. And do something nice for yourself.
Isn't that what they say? If it's in the internet, it must be true.
Do something nice for yourself. For example, making your favorite meal or playing a game you enjoy.
Yeah.
Try to recognize positives. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small they may seem. Take time to praise yourself, for example. This could be getting outside for a walk or doing some tidying. Accept compliments. You could save them up to look over when you're feeling low or doubting yourself. Ask people what they like about you. If you feel comfortable, they may recognize things that you don't think about yourself. Write a list of things you like about yourself. For example, this could be a skill that you've learned or something you do to help others. Build a support network. Talk to someone you trust. Having someone listen to you and show that they care can help. Holding space. If you aren't able to open up to someone close to you, you could call a help line to speak to someone anonymously. For example, you could call Samaritans at, I don't know if this is American, no, this is a UK number. But there may be hotlines out there that you can call for support. Focus on positive relationships. It might feel difficult to control who you spend time with, but where possible, it can help to spend more time with people who make you feel good about yourself. If you feel like, if you have the thought of, oh my God, I can't wait till this is over, end the relationship and move on. I can't wait to go home, end it, and go home and just fucking cut your losses. It's just not good for you. And like, if you know, we know those relationships that we're going into. We know it. And then try peer support. Making connections with people who have similar or shared experiences can help. Try talk therapy. God, there's a lot here.
I was just saying, I'm running out of paper.
Set
that's
yourself
a lot
a challenge.
of stuff.
Try volunteering. Set small goals. Learn something new. Look after yourself. Get enough sleep. Think about your diet. Try to do some physical activity. Spend time outside. Practice mindfulness and meditation. Try to avoid recreational drugs or alcohol. Scratch out. Negative. And sign up to a self-help program. There's a lot of information here.
Wow. Thanks, because I'm going to take some of these.
I'm going to send it to you now.
Okay.
So that we can post it where it needs to be posted, because that's really good.
Yeah, that's a great list. Where have you found that? That's really...
I'll send it to myself. So it's
and I need, it's like, because I struggle. I struggle with this, for sure. And I know that. I know. I mean, I saw the comment that said, like, not being able to love yourself doesn't mean you can't love others, and the question about that. But I do know that I am more capable of caring for others. I'm more capable of being the person I want to be. Whether how I care for others or what I want to do is not about what you want. It's about who I want to be. How do I want to show up in the world? And I can only do that when I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah. And
these were great, great tips to practice, right? And I like having so many of them because I can't do all of them, but I can certainly find, pick out and do some of them. Documents page for other. Yeah, I will try to see if I can't go back and track back to where some of this information came from, and get it out to you.
What's tomorrow's question?
What is tomorrow's question? Where is that info? Let's see. Tomorrow's question is, what can you learn from your biggest mistakes?
Did we skip over, do you use your time wisely?
Where's do you use your time wisely?
I think we missed that.
Did we do that? We may have.
Did we do using your time wisely?
We did that.
Oh.
All right. Then I don't know. I don't know why my numbers are messed up, because it does look like if the numbers the way they're lined up means that we must have missed one. We did it. 12. Okay. Thanks, Hurricane.
Oh, this is the end of your life question today.
Did I jump to the wrong question today?
Did we? Yeah, I don't think we. What's the one thing you'd like others to remember at the end of your life? Did we talk about that one?
No. No, I'm pretty sure because we were gonna, but we didn't.
All right. So what we'll.
No,
sorry, we didn't. There we go.
Yeah,
Number
we did.
12.
Okay.
All right. So that's
tomorrow.
We'll
do that tomorrow. One. Okay, good.
What's
Thank you.
the one thing you'd like others to remember
about you at the end
of your life? All right.
Let me mark that so that tomorrow I remember that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, we're gonna. We missed one because we saw the numbers change.
Yeah. No.
All right, perfect. So we'll get that covered.
Awesome. Thanks for tracking that back.
Yeah, there was just something off with the numbers.
The numbers, yeah, and you're right. That meant we forgot something. But anyway, thank you again. Thank you all. Like, listen, I owe you all like.